And welcome. It's Friday and you're live, but unfortunately, I'm not. I'm recording this the day before. I have a meeting tomorrow with the LTA online and it clashes with my proposed webinar time. And then I'm traveling to Liverpool afterwards, so I won't have time to go live tomorrow. But rather than cancel it, I thought I'd record it the day before and then live stream it to you guys and girls on YouTube and Facebook. Please feel free to leave comments and questions still in the comment section or in the chat, and I will still get back to you. But I do apologize for not being fully live today. I'm still not going to edit it. It's still going to be quite raw. And hope you enjoy it. So today's webinar is why tactics must come before technique. And it's a hot topic sometimes within coaching. But I do believe that we have a problem within tennis coaching. Technique is a major priority of tennis coaches. So the past 4 weeks, I've been doing LTA coach forums. I've been traveling around different counties with you, coach, and the LTA, and delivering an on-court workshop. And the on-court workshop was based on why we must teach tactics alongside technique and not be very technical heavy. I would say still, there's a lot of coaches out there who believe technique is the most important aspect of the game. And we're going to look at sort of why that's probably not the case today, and sort of I put forward my argument. And as always with these webinars and all my content, I'm not preaching. I'm not saying this is the way you have to coach and this is better than that way. Model-based coaching, constraint-based coaching is best. I'm just offering my opinion. I feel that I'm quite fortunate in my position as a coach educator that I get access to some really good education from the LTA, and I get access to sort of obviously tutor training, and I'm also quite a geek, so I do a lot of research and stuff myself on different sports, not just tennis, rugby, football, water polo the other week, which is a bit weird, Australian rules football this morning. I was looking at a webinar, and I just try and bring what I think's some really good practice and bring it all together. I'm just sharing ideas, so I'm not saying that technique is not important. I just don't believe that we should prioritize it as much. Today's video was actually going to be different. Well, webinar, sorry. It was going to be different. I was going to go on social media and sort of scroll through Instagram Reels and sort of share my opinions of games, what I liked about some games. I didn't want to sort of blast anyone for sort of bad social media posts, because I think everyone does it from a good place. But as I was sort of maybe prepping myself and having a little look through the other day, the vast majority is very technical heavy. And that's an issue as well, because again, I don't think it comes from a bad place. And I think a lot of the views, like some of the accounts have got massive followings, but some of the technical stuff they're putting out there isn't right. It isn't quite technically right. And there's definitely no tactics involved. And I just think that the social media world we live in, like, we just got to be careful of the sort of content we're absorbing. And it's a bit like gym content or fitness content. There's so many sort of fitness influencers out there who are jacked and muscly and ripped, and they're putting out content. People look at them and yeah, they must be really good and they must have great knowledge because the way they look. But it's not quite the case. They may look great, but their knowledge might not be that great. So I think a lot of social media posts are very technical related. And again, I spend a lot of time traveling different clubs and sort of going around and watching different lessons in my breaks and stuff. And so many lessons are still technical heavy, really teaching the kids how to hold the racket, how to shape up, what to do in terms of the follow through, and the stance is very descriptive. And that's an issue as well, which we're sort of going to look at. And why are these problems? Well, tennis is a sport at the end of the day. It's a sport. You don't sort of win points for how you look. You win points for beating your opponent. And you might not have the greatest technique in the world, but you get points for outsmarting or outmaneuvering your opponent, or maybe just being calmer when they get stressed and anxious. You're just calmer, and sort of they make lots of more mistakes and get really frustrated, but you just stay slow and steady, wins the race, as they say. And so it's about winning points. It's not about how you look. And the research shows that under pressure, technical skills are the first thing to break down. And obviously, if you look at stuff like The Inner Game of Tennis, classic book, the author talks a lot about there where people overcomplicate technique and they overthink. And it's a common phrase. I'm sure if you're a tennis coach, you've heard, I'm thinking too much, or I'm overcomplicating it. I've got too much going on in my mind. It's because the body can't absorb lots of information at once. And in tennis, you have on average 1.5 seconds between you hitting the ball and the ball coming back. So it's not a long time. So if you're talking about 90-degree angle of the elbow and hip and shoulder rotation, and your foot has to be placed here and your other foot has to be placed there, you haven't got the time. And under that type of pressure, if players are constantly thinking about technical skills, it breaks down very quickly and it becomes very frustrating for players. You don't score points on form or effort. So it's not synchronized diving where your technique is measured and scored, and that will then go towards the outcome in terms of the medal positions at the Olympics. You don't get points for effort or intention. So in boxing, for example, if you're aggressive and you're throwing punches and you're trying to knock your opponent out, you'll score points. And that, if it goes to the results, that's going to add up. But in tennis, you don't score points for how you look. And I think if you look at Medvedev, I think if Medvedev was coached, especially in this country, would he made it? I'm not too sure, because again, here in Great Britain, still very technical heavy mindset with a lot of coaches. Not so much now at the top end, but definitely sort of grassroots level. So would Medvedev's technique been allowed to flourish? Probably not, I don't think. And I do believe he got to world number one. You look at his technique and you think, oh, that doesn't look great. Like if you look at Federer, it's like night and day. Federer's so elegant and everyone looks perfect. But Medvedev's is messy, it's awkward, it's unorthodox. World number one. So I think we need to keep that in mind, is we don't actually score points how it looks. It's more about the effectiveness and how efficient the technique is. And tennis is an open game with variables. There's no guarantees. So again, a lot of this technical coaching online and in lessons, it's all about the coach feeding in the perfect ball and the player learning the skill, which, listen, I get 100%. I think sometimes even me, I isolate a skill and I bring it down and I'll work on maybe a movement or the path or the angle or the speed. But as soon as the player starts to get it, I start to open it up and develop it. And there's a great sort of presentation I was watching on Pep Guardiola when he was at Barcelona. And he'll set up a practice. If the players could repeat the skill 3 or 4 times in a row, he would change the practice, because he knew in the match they're not going to play that same pass 3 or 4 times in a row. So the foot might have to be a little bit different. The receiver might have to be slightly out of position, or the ball will come in a little bit quicker or different angle. So he changed the game. And you only have to look at that Barcelona team of sort of how great they were sort of working in space. And people think they were very technical, skillful players, which they are. But they didn't learn all those skills by standing in isolation and work on trapping the ball and their foot and sort of their foot position. They learned sort of all those technical skills by playing very small-sided games, 3-a-side, 4-a-side, playing without a goal, playing with one goal, playing in very small spaces, playing in bigger spaces. So you learn a lot of their technical skills by actually playing the game, which again, we'll sort of look at a little bit in this presentation, but especially over the next sort of 2 webinars, we'll definitely look at how we can actually teach technique in a more fun and more open situation rather than sort of isolating it down. So we have 4 main sort of skills, or 4 categories of skills. So I'm going to list them in priority order. And this is what we look at sort of from an LTA's point of view here in the UK. I know when we've talked about performance factors or performance skills or performance principles from working with players, this is the order that we sort of put them in. Mental. Tennis, again, you only have to listen to the commentators at Wimbledon. How tennis is a mental game, is a game of chess. It is. Tennis is very much mental. I don't mean mental as in crazy. I mean sort of mental as sort of skills. Can the player deal with pressure? Can they deal with scoreboard pressure? Can they deal with external, internal pressure? Can they concentrate? Can they maintain that concentration? Are they confident? So all these skills are really massive. And I think Djokovic, again, we'll probably use him a few times today. Djokovic, I think, once said in an interview that everyone has good forehands, good backhands. Everyone's an athlete. The difference between him, Roger, and Rafa is up here. It's what between it's sort of what's between the ears, and he believes that they can deal with the pressure more. They deal with the big points, the big situations better, and that's the difference between a world number 1 and a world number 10. Is everyone's got good technique, everyone's good athletes. So it's the mental sort of side of the game which will sort of separate an unbelievable player to a good player. Then it's the physicality, especially in the modern game. Again, if you only have to look at the sort of the top 100 players, they're unbelievable athletes. They move really well. They're super strong. They do lots of sort of strength and conditioning. So the physical skills are really, really important in the modern game. And we have to teach them very young as well, especially now in this day and age where kids aren't doing as much sport, or they're not doing other sports. They're sort of early specialization in tennis. So we have to teach them a lot of those physical skills. And we all know from long-term player development that the ideal time, or the window of opportunity, is at under 10. So at red, orange, and green, 8, 9s, and 10s, we have to develop the physical literacy of these players, especially now when kids are spending more time they are on YouTube and iPads than they are sort of playing out and playing with friends. So a big part of our role now is sometimes less about the tennis skill, but more about developing the person, and sort of make sure that they're mentally sort of have that sort of mindset and those mental skills, but those physical skills. Then we have the tactical skill. So tactics, again, because it's a game. Again, if you go to any football club or soccer club or American football or basketball, before they play a match, they won't be talking about technique. They won't be talking about how to take a penalty, how to take a field goal, how to throw American football. It'll be all about what we're going to do with that ball. And tennis should be the same. But again, it was interesting. I was at a club the other week, and I was watching a lesson, and the player was getting ready for tournaments, and the coach was working on technique. Okay, in the match, you're going to have to hit the ball like this and sort of do this. There was no tactical relevance. So what's the player going to do when you get into the match? Focus so much on technique. But again, they're not going to win the point, or they're unlikely to win the match, because they're going to be so focused on how they're hitting the ball and less focused on what they're actually sort of doing with it. So tactics have to come first, and we're going to really unpack that in this webinar. And then technical is the last thing, because again, when I'm working with players, this is the little sort of checklist that I sort of go through, my sort of little flow chart or framework. When I'm looking at players, okay, why are things breaking down? First thing I look at is mental. Are they focused? Are they ready? Are they confident? If they're not confident, then that's going to be a massive issue, and that's going to affect their technique. If they're not focused, if they're looking at mum and dad and waving sort of, and they're distracted, or they're messing around with their mates, the technique is going to be affected underneath. Then I look at physical. So do they read and react to the ball? Can they get set up behind the ball? Do they recover? Are they too slow and overstretching? Are they too quick and they can't decelerate? That's going to affect technique. Tactical. Are they trying to hit a winner from behind the baseline? Are they sort of defending when they should have an opportunity to attack? Are they making the right tactical decisions? And again, that's going to affect technique as well. If they're trying to smash your winner when they're 6 feet behind the baseline, you may look at the technique and think, oh, okay, yeah, it's too flat. You need to go low to high more. But it might be trying to attack, or so they're not trading. They're trying to attack. So therefore, rightly so, they're going flat because they're trying to hit an aggressive ball. But that's not a technical issue; it's a tactical issue. So that's just the sort of 4 performance factors, and sort of how I prioritize them, and sort of I know how sort of the LTA coaches look at it as well from sort of my work with them. But let's look at technique a little bit differently. And this is sort of a little analogy that I use a lot with players and parents and coaches when I'm doing coach education. So let's pretend that technique is like ingredients, food ingredients. We all like eating. We have to eat. I love my food. So let's look at technique and pretend they're ingredients. So I'm going to give you 3 ingredients. Beef, or a non-meat product if you're vegan or don't eat meat. So some form of protein, pasta, some carbs, and then some tomatoes. So some veg or some carbs as well. So if I was to give you those 3 ingredients and say, okay, make me a dish, what would you make me? So I'm not going to give you any more information. Just, okay, they're the 3 ingredients. Make me something to eat. The issue of that, it's a bit like when we coach and we're telling players to have a C shape, or your grip has to be here, your elbow has to be here, or your racket face has to be here. We give these little ingredients, these little snippets of technique. But unless the player knows what they're trying to achieve, it's pretty pointless, because if I give you these 3 ingredients and you go into Google, there are literally millions of different recipes of what you can do. You can make me a pasta bake. You can make me some type of risotto and stuff like that. And there's different types of beef. You may not like beef. You may be a vegan. You may like corn or pasta. How many different types of pasta are there? Yeah, tomatoes. We talk about tin tomatoes, plum tomatoes, cherry tomatoes again. So with all these ingredients, there's so many different variations, so many different ideas, and you can make millions of different recipes. And it's very similar to sort of tennis in many ways. So let's say I was a bit more specific. That's okay. I want some spaghetti bolognese. Okay. Now you know what I want. So again, from a coaching point of view, I want you to hit your forehand cross court. Okay, so you know what I want now. At least you know what I want. 23 million recipes on Google on spaghetti bolognese. All have the core ingredients, the protein, the carbs, or the fats. If we relate that to tennis, path, angle, speed. Yeah, they're the three core ingredients to tennis technique. So those 23 million recipes will all have a protein, a carbs, and some fats. Yeah, they're the three pillars of food. 23 million people will make that differently. That's the process. Okay, so that's how they blend all those things together. So the ingredients, the technical knowledge, the model coaching, that's your core ingredients. The process is, okay, how you get that information across to the player and how the player processes it and tries to perform or blend those techniques together. And it all looks differently, but it all ends up being the same result. Everyone will make a spaghetti bolognese. And like, if you just go on, 23 million recipes all have the same core ingredients, protein, carbs, and fats. 23 million different ways of making it. Some very similar. Yeah, process is always very similar, but all will look and taste different. But ultimately, it's still the same dish. And that's what I think technique is. Technique is, it's so subjective. And people say to me all the time, oh, what do you think about my forehand? I'm like, well, it depends. Oh, what do you think about that person's backhand? Well, it depends. Like, it depends on them. It depends on what they're trying to do with it. It's the same with spaghetti bolognese. Like, ultimately, it depends what the ultimate food is at the end. Sorry, the meal is at the end, because it depends on how you make it. It depends on what ingredients you have. So from a tennis point of view, are you 6'4"? Are you 5'10"? Okay, so you've got different strengths there. Plum tomatoes, cherry tomatoes. So, but ultimately it's all the same. It's so it doesn't really matter sort of how we get there. So we need to move away from this model one size fits all technique. So I've got a great video here of Djokovic. This was an Instagram post that I put out a long time ago. And it says, stop traditional coaching. Very similar to what we're talking about today. But let's just watch Novak play. Okay, so obviously Djokovic, he hits 3 forehands, 3 backhands. All 6 look different. So 3 forehands, all 3 completely different. 3 backhands, all 3 completely different. So in terms of the how he's hitting the shot, the process, all different. But all had the same ingredients. Yeah. He altered the path, the angle, the speed of the racket. They're the 3 key ingredients of sort of technique. So even though they all look different, they all had those core ingredients, but they all had different tactical outcomes. Sometimes he was attacking. There's a backhand there where he defends and blocks. Some he's sort of trading. Some maybe he's trying to be a little bit more aggressive. It's difficult to see because obviously you can't see the other side of the court. But tactically, they were all different. So 6 shots, all tactically different. But all had very key technical ingredients. And the process was different as well. And that's why we need to get away from this one size fits all model of, okay, this is how we hit the perfect forehand, this is how we hit the perfect backhand. Because there's no such thing. You'll never hit the same shot twice in a row. And I get the idea of shaping up and, okay, repetition, but tennis is not a repetitive sport. Like, you're not going to hit the same shot 10 times in a row. You can hit one shot and then 9 different variations of that shot. So we need to move away from this whole mindset of technique as king, because I think some of it is, I mentioned it in my last webinar, I think some of it is peer pressure. I think from parents, as experts, we feel like we have to give lots of knowledge. And sometimes, like any job, you throw in lots of technical jargon, you almost sound like you know what you're talking about. But it's just not the game. And I think it's a quick fix, because I do believe, even if we are very technical heavy, there will be little elements of tactics, but we just have to reframe it and we have to switch it around. And listen, 10 years ago, I was that technical coach. I was so into technique. I was so into biomechanics, and I'd really close drill down, and my players technically would look great from a very young age. But then the light bulb came on when you go to tournaments and they don't play that way. And I can remember working with a player many years ago, and sort of when I was at Wrexham, and we spent a long time working on the serve, and maybe 6-8 weeks, and he was serving really well. And then he went off for half term to compete. And he came back and the serve changed. I was like, oh man, what's happened here? Like, we spent 8 weeks on the serve, and it's changed. Like, you've almost gone back. And the player said something to me really powerful. He said, but when I got into a match, I had to change. I had to change it because of the pressure. Like, he couldn't perform the action in the sort of under pressure, and he adapted to sort of different situations. One day it was windy, the next match he was playing, it was wet and heavy, and that was like a light bulb moment for me. And I sort of went away from that session. I was like, he's right. Like, I've been coaching this very closed model based way, because that's the way I was taught as a coach back in the day. And my environment at the time is very technical heavy, very high performance center, which I was working at. I was like, I'm doing this wrong. Like, I'm teaching this kid how to be this model player, but the match is so variable. The match is chaotic. It's all over the place. Like, and then they're going to these matches, and they're having to adapt themselves. And that was a massive light bulb moment for me. And that's when I started going down this rabbit hole of, okay, I need to be more game based. And then I started looking to sort of constraint based coaching and stuff like that. And the thing I came away is, I've got to teach the game. I've got to teach the game of tennis. I've got to teach the sport. Again, if I think back to when I played football, like, it was not much technical input. You're given a ball, there's a pitch, go and figure it out. And you adapted because you found ways to win. If I wanted to ping a ball cross court, if I wanted to ping a ball cross field, I had to adapt how I kicked that ball. And yeah, the first few wasn't that great. I wasn't a great crosser, but I'd keep working at it until I got it. And then I realized, okay, if I get my foot a little bit more open, and if I really slightly lean back as I make contact, and if I use my hips and shoulders to sort of generate some momentum into a kick, okay, the ball travels further. So I really went back after that chat with the player, and almost thought about like how I grew up. Like, I couldn't afford coaching football, tennis, basketball. I was pretty good at a lot of sports. And why was I so good? I just did the sport. I just played the sport, and I learned and adapted. And again, I'm very kinesthetic, and kinesthetic learners, I just learned by doing. I figured it out myself. And I think with a lot of the stuff, and we'll look at a framework today, is if we set them up into situations, and we tell them the game, then the technique will develop quicker anyway. And I think that's a big thing. So we need to get the players to understand situations, opportunities and problems, and then solutions. So we need to set up these situations. So if we are going to work on a technical aspect, because again, we do need to work on technique, because it is part of the game. You need to be able to hit the ball and manipulate how the ball moves. So, and that involves, again, technical skill or tennis skill. But we need to understand that the players need to adapt that skill in different situations. They're going to have opportunities. They're going to face some problems, and they need to come up with the solutions as well. So how we frame it and how we sell the why to the players is really key. And we've got to link in the tactics with the technique. So the tactics are what I call the what and why, and the technique is the how. Like, you can't separate them. And sometimes when people listen to me talk on webinars or coach education, or when they see me coach, you think, oh, that guy's so anti-technique. Like, he doesn't talk about technique an awful lot. One, I don't talk about it a lot because I hide it. I try and make the player work it out themselves, and I will guide them towards what I believe can help their technique. So I hide a lot of my sort of technical coaching. But it is it is important. Like it's how we send the ball back. It's how we receive the ball. Technique is a movement. It's how we move to the ball. When you walk, that's technical. Yeah. So technique is sort of, I'm not anti-technique, and people think that I'm so anti-technique. I'm not. It's just, I think the way we present technique is sort of back to front. I think we should look at the game tactically first, and then look at technique. And we have to teach the game under pressure conditions. There has to be a purpose. One coach who I won't name, good coach to be fair, sort of nice coach, but like he'd coach and it would just be complete random stuff, and the player would be knocking the ball out the court. He's going, "Yeah, good shot, well done, excellent," and the kid's clearing the fence at the back. Great hip and shoulder rotation. I was like, there's just no outcome there. So the players just none the wiser what's going on. And sort of they used to say, like, it doesn't matter about sort of what happens with the ball, just get the technique right, and then it will all fall into place. There's just no pressure there. So yeah, they may have had a great unit turn. They may have generated lots of racket head speed, but in a match situation, what happens? They'll go back to just jabbing or punting the ball over because they can't play under pressure. And in 2 weeks' time, I'm sort of going to do another webinar, which I'll talk about at the end of today. And I'm going to show you some games, some constraint-based games, which I do with my players, because we have to put them under a little bit of stress in training. So we have to make sure they can practice stuff under pressure. And the outcome, the what and the why, tactical. Yeah, so the outcome should be tactical based. What we try and do with the ball and why. And then the process is the how. The process is the technique. Yeah. So we just have to flip these around. If 50% of coaches in this country, and maybe across the world, just swapped technique and tactics and went the other way around, tactics, technique, we'll be in such a better position. So what do I do? So how do I go from this tactical mindset and then get to technique? So I use a tactical development framework, and this is based on a framework that UCoach put together many years ago, and the LTA have adapted a copy of this as well. And this is my own sort of little framework that I use, my little check sheet or flow chart. And you can actually download this tactical development framework from my website from today. If you go to mytenniscoaching.com, at the top right-hand corner, there's a button. Click the button, enter your email, and it gets sent straight to your email list. So if you do like the look at this and you want to use it your players, feel free to download it. It's free. You just need to put your email in, and it's yours. So where do I start? I have to start with the situation. So on the right-hand side of the screen there, you got the where. On the left-hand side, we got the game situation. So these are 5 classic game situations that we all know. Serve has to go first, by the way. The amount of times I've seen this framework or versions of this framework done, and both back goes first. It really winds me up. Both back goes first in some of those frameworks because the majority of coaches just work on ground strokes. But the game starts with a serve and return. So in my framework, the serve is first because it's the first shot we play. Then we have the return. Both back is when both players are at the baseline. Player at the net is when your player is at the net or they're approaching. So there could be a short ball. And then obviously the opposite to that is when their opponent is at the net or the opponent is approaching. So we have to start off with a game situation. That's the first thing we need to look at. What situation we're playing in. Because again, I see a lot of coaching going on where the player stood in the midcourt and they're working on a forehand. But it's a forehand that's meant to be both back. But they're in the wrong tactical position. Or they're working on, probably that's the best example, to be honest. So we need to think about the phase of play next as well. So we got 3 phases of play. Now, I word this differently to a lot of coaches. So we have offense, neutral, and defense. Some coaches call it attack for offense. I don't like the word attack because if you say attack to a player, they just think they have to belt the ball. Offense is a word that we used to use in football a lot. So be offensive. So it's when you're trying to apply pressure. Because I think sometimes if you use the word attack, players will try and attack the ball from it for all angles. Like, you can attack both back, but you're probably just trying to apply pressure. You're not trying to hit a winner sometimes. It's like in football, like we can be offensive from in our own half because we can attack with pace and spread the play. Doesn't mean we're going to shoot. And I think sometimes the word attack sort of throws players off. So I use the word offense or offensive. Neutral. So it's when it's balanced. Again, a phrase here would be trading. We say to kids trading, they have no idea what that means. Or rally. I hate the word rally, because if you say to a player rally, they just think, oh, just keep the ball going. Neutral is when it's balanced, when no one has the upper hand. Yeah, you're not applying pressure because maybe you're too far back, but also you're trying to get the ball to a position where they can't attack you. It's balanced. And there's an interesting sort of presentation I seen, and they said, oh, rally's the most common game phase, and I was like, oh, I'm not too sure on that, because if you watch any sort of top player, like, or top match, very rarely in rally, someone will always have a slight advantage. Someone will always be a little bit more under pressure or under pressure than the other player. So I don't think we spend a lot of time when it's neutral, especially like in a serving situation. When do you ever try and serve and sort of make it neutral? You generally serve and try and be offensive. So, but it's in that because it is part of the game to sort of maybe neutralize or sort of keep it balanced. And defense. So defense is when you're under pressure. So if someone's attacking you, taking the ball early, and you sort of have to defend. Again, I think this phase of play is not taught enough. I think a lot of coaches spend so much time in either neutral or offense positions, especially at club level or sort of county level. You're going to be in defense an awful lot. So it's like, again, I'm a big football fan, soccer fan. If you think about my team, Everton, we've had some really offensive managers, attacking managers. We've had some offensive managers too. Very attacking minded. Marco Silva, Roberto Martinez. But you can't always attack. And we've unfortunately dealt this bad side of that and got some hide-ins, because you need to learn how to defend as well. And we need to teach our players to play in all three phases. Because in a single rally, you're going to transition between all three phases, no matter what level you play. Even if you're playing floor tennis, there's going to be opportunities to be attacking or offensive. There's going to be times where it's balanced. There's going to be times where you have to defend. So we need to teach all three players teach players how to play in all three areas. But we have different intentions as well, because we can be in offense different ways. We can try and apply pressure by being accurate. Yeah, maybe going closer to the lines, maybe sort of highlighting a player's weakness, which we'll look at in a few moments. We can try with power. Yeah, so hitting the ball harder, flatter, quicker. Or we can take the ball earlier. Yeah, stepping inside the court, taking the ball early is what I class as being offensive. Neutral. Okay, so to be neutral, you got to have good rally threshold. Yeah, so things sort of don't break down when you're in that neutral position. You don't give away the short ball, because then that's going to apply pressure, and then you're going to be in defense. You got to be accurate. Again, you don't want to be leaving that short ball away, because you're going to quickly find yourself in defense. And you got to keep a good tempo as well. Again, sometimes with players, when they get tight and under pressure, the tempo drops and they start hitting the ball a little bit higher, a bit slower. But again, that's dangerous, because you're then going to find yourself in defense. So when the situation is neutral, you've got to be consistent. You've got to be accurate. You've got to maintain that tempo. Then we have sort of the 5 core, what I call basic tactics. Consistency, get the ball over and in. Yeah, the first thing we should be teaching these kids, okay, is how to get the ball in. But as soon as they can get the ball in a couple of times, we've got to move them on. Again, we don't spend a lot of time in neutral or rally situations. So we've got to make sure that they can take advantage. And I literally wrote a blog this morning about the ultimate tennis stats. It's on my website if you want to check it out. And most of the top players now, again, the rally of 4 has been around for years, but they're taking control very quick. They're using their serve to set up a forehand. The men are now going 71% forehand next ball after serve. and they're winning 75% of the shots, and I think less than 60% are more than 4 shots. So we've got to move on from this. Okay, let's teach our kids to rally to 50. Great for rally threshold. Very rarely are they going to get a single rally of 50 in their junior career, even probably their pro career if they can make it that far. So once we get them consistent, we've got to then move on to the others. Control space. So can you make your opponent move? Control time. Can you take the ball earlier? Can you hit the ball quicker? As we looked at power there for being offensive. Use your strengths. Just talked about using their forehand. 71% of the men will play serve and then the forehand. And finding weaknesses. Yeah, so again, everyone's probably got a weakness. Might be the backhand generally, or maybe weak at the net. But these are sort of the 5 basic tactics, and we can break them down and sort of you can also make that bigger if you want to. But they're the sort of 5 basic ones that I use. Now we have to think about, okay, well, how do I achieve all that? So I've got to send the ball in different ways to take the ball with more power. So I hit the ball with more power. I've got to think about how do I hit the ball to neutralize or to stay? And this is what we call ball characteristics. So we can manipulate and change the ball in here 5 different ways. We can change the height. We can hit higher. We can hit lower. We can change direction. I can go cross court. I can go down the line. Different depths, short, deep, speed, fast, slow, consistent. Different spins, top spin, slice, side spin. So we can manipulate the ball in different ways. But then how do we do that? So these are 3 core ingredients we looked at before. It's not beef, pasta, and tomatoes. It's the path, angle, speed. So to me, technique's dead simple. It's not complicated. And I know we have biomechanical principles and some really great Mark Kovkas and Bruce Elliott and stuff, really unbelievable sort of biomechanical minds. But ultimately, it comes down to path, angle, speed. Okay, you can manipulate the path, the angle, the speed to get different ball characteristics, and that will then give you different tactical options. So what can we change with the path? We can either go low to high, side to side, or high to low. It's really that simple. In terms of sending the ball, in terms of pushing the racket through the ball, there's 3 main planes: low to high, side to side, high to low. Dead easy, dead simple, not even that complicated. In terms of angle the racket, I can have an open racket face, maybe for slice, closed racket face for topspin. I can either take the ball early or late in reference to my body. Just taking the ball early to go cross court, a little bit later to go down the line. That's the angle of the racket. And the speed, I think speed's quite difficult to explain because, again, when we think of speed, we think of miles per hour or kilometers per hour. That's very difficult to get the message across to players. So I talk about rhythm. So I can either have a slow to quick rhythm. So my swing will start slow, but then it will increase in speed. So that's slow to quick. Consistent, it's the same speed throughout. It might be slow to slow or quick to quick. Most kids will go quick to quick. And then we'll have quick to slow. So maybe I'll start really quick, but then decelerate my racket, maybe for a drop shot, or if I'm trying to sort of disguise a slice, or maybe not a slice, but maybe if I'm trying to disguise or play really sort of quick hands or a little dinky shot. So I might then change it sort of quick to slow. So this is my tactical framework. So when I'm working with players, this is what I work through. So I will always start with a game situation. Okay, so let's say we're looking at serve. Then I'll think, okay, what do I want to do with the serve? What type of phase of play do I want my player to be in? Okay, I might want to be offensive. Okay, how are they going to apply pressure with the serve? You know what? We're going to look at hitting the serve with power. Yeah, I really want a big first serve. Okay, so if I'm going to go power, what tactic links into that? Out the 5, probably controlling time. Because if they hit the ball with power, if they're being offensive and attacking, it's going to take time and space away from an opponent. Okay, so I'm now going to tick off that one. Okay, for me to get that, what do I need to put more on the ball? And there's a couple of these you can pick. So you might increase spin. Yeah, which maybe give you a different type of sort of feel of the ball, feel off the court. But obviously speed's the key one there. Can I increase the ball speed? Okay, so how can I now increase the ball speed? Now I think about the technique. So I've started looking at the tactics. I looked at the game situation. I looked at the phase of play. I looked at the intention. I looked at the tactics. I looked at what the ball characteristics. Now, how do I achieve all that? And that's the way I work, because if you work it the other way around, it literally makes no sense. If I start off with a racket work first and work backwards, it's hard for the player to see, because yes, they may be able to, let's say for the forehand, low to high to generate spin, but why? And so that's why the why is right in the middle. Why? Because if I generate spin, I might be able to control time, or it's again, my forehand, use my strength. Why? What's the intention? What phase of play you're in? What game situation you're in? Like, so by doing it this way, by putting the tactics before the technique, it makes sense. It makes just logical sense. And so this why I like using this sort of diagram when I go on court with players, because they can see the journey. Again, players are very visual. If I talk to my player through this, they'll probably get lost and stop listening to me after the phase. But if I show them a little route map, which I'll show you now. So here we go. So what I sort of tend to do is I can sort of tick it off or show them here. Look, okay, so Steve, today we're going to work on serve. We're going to look at applying pressure, being a bit more offensive with your serve. Okay, we're going to look at accuracy though. I really want to try and find the corners, and that's going to help control space against your opponents. So we're going to look at getting different directions on the ball today. So there's 3 things we could look on, Steve. We could look at the path of the racket going high to low, make sure we're getting that sort of good high contact, make sure we get up and over the net. We could work on a closed racket face, maybe get sort of slice to go out wide to the left, being a right-hander. And okay, we also could look at slow to quick speed. So then we could do a little game assessment and see where sort of Steve's at. And then realize, okay, he's opening his racket face up, so he can't quite get that slice or slider out wide because his racket face is open too much. Now I've got my technical teaching point. But I've got my technical teaching point that links in with the game, and the player understands the why, and they can see physically on my sort of little drop-down menu here the reason. And that's so powerful, because when they go into a match, they're going to think about this. When they step up to that baseline, they think, okay, I'm going to serve out wide. Why? Because it's going to be applying pressure. It's accuracy. I'm controlling space. Okay, I need to get direction on the ball. Oh, I've got to keep my racket face closed. Rather than going into the match and thinking, okay, chopper grip, angle of the racket, 90 degree. And they're thinking about so much about what they're doing. They get that analysis paralysis, and they just can't play the match. They can't play the game. And I'm not, again, preaching. I'm not saying that I do it differently to you. Well, I'm not saying that your way of doing it is incorrect, because if it works and you're producing players, and hats off to you, you're doing a really good job. But for me, this just makes a bit more sense. And hopefully if you're watching this video and you think, you know what, that does make a bit of sense, try it out. Try it out with your players and just see how they respond. Because I know when I started with my players doing this way, the response was positive. The response was positive, not only in lessons, because everything was clearer. Yeah, it gave the technique a purpose, but also when they went into matches, they were thinking more tactically. Okay, they were definitely thinking about, okay, how can I win the game? How can I manipulate the ball characteristics to achieve the tactics? And then they just little fixes to path, angle, and speed. And that's about it. So listen, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I do hope you found it useful. That's just my way of working. And like I said a few times, it may not be for you. You may feel, yeah, you know what, I like that idea. Try it out. And said, there's a copy of that flow chart on my website, mytenniscoaching.com, top right-hand corner. Click the button, and then you'll be able to download it straight away. 1 email to your inbox. You can download it from there. Next week, we're going to look at technical development. So I'm going to show you, okay, how do I look at technique as a framework? Okay, how do I analyze technique? How do I sort of see where it's breaking down? And then the week after, very, very special webinar, I'm actually going to show you how I teach tactics and technique in fun games. How do I disguise a lot of the technical jargon and a lot of the really in-depth stuff to an under 8 player? Because I work on all this stuff we're talking about at under 8. most of the stuff. And that's going to be YouTube exclusive, just because it was going to be a closed webinar on my website, but I've got like 50 people who are booked on. And I'm just a bit conscious of Zoom not being able to deal with that many people, especially because it's a video type presentation. So I'm actually going to stream it on YouTube using some software. So I know the video quality is going to be really good. So it's open to everybody now. So if you want to join me on the 18th of November, just go over to my YouTube, My Tennis Coaching, subscribe, and you'll get a notification the day before. And then you'll get a notification just before I go live as well. And the great thing about it going on YouTube is you can then watch it on demand. Again, you can only watch it on demand if you are subscribed, because you'll get the notification. So that's the next 2 webinars. So next Friday, we're going to look at technical development. I'm going to show you my technical development framework. And the week after is a really good one. It's going to be 90 minutes, and it's going to be videos of me coaching real players. Yeah, and not coaching like unbelievable standard players. You're looking at sort of quite raw 7-8-year-olds, and you're going to sort of see what I do. And again, you may find it useful, you may think it's not for you, but I'm quite happy putting my sort of ideas out there, because if I can help one of you on this call, on this webinar, then that's all I want to do, is just help people out. And then November 25th, I don't have a topic yet. So send me some ideas. Either leave me a comment down below, or you can email me at steve@mytenniscoaching.com. Feel free to DM me on Instagram at mytenniscoaching, or Facebook. And if you do enjoy these webinars, you can support the page. It does take a lot of time making all this content. I'm not in it to make money, but if you did want to sort of help out, I am available to receive stars on Facebook. So if you click the stars icon for like 99 pence or 99 cents, you can sort of just give a little contribution to the page, and every little helps. And the plan of action, especially next year, is to upscale this and build a studio and get some nice camera kit and do some really professional looking videos, because I just want to help people, basically. And that's why I'm a coach educator. But I also want to share ideas. So it'd be great if some coaches on this call, if you want to come on and we can have a chat and do some kind of interview and maybe share your ideas, and that'd be great as well. So if you do want to support the page, please feel free. Until then, until next Friday, have a great week. Again, apologies, I can't be live today, but hopefully you appreciate the recording, and I'll see you on court very soon.